So, hello everyone. Today's guests are successful entrepreneurs. They started in the medical industry and moved on to the financial industry, which basically started with their desire to spend more time with family and, also to learn more about things on the financial side. And now they help other families do the same. Welcome, Mitch and Glenn Pacleb.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Anne. Thanks for the intro. Thanks for the opportunity and sharing and hopefully impacting a lot of families out there. Hopefully we give value that people can, use in bettering their lives as well.
Of course, of course. I mean, the whole point of this is to promote healthier conversations around finance, ideally in a biblical Christian way. But at the end of the day, there is a need and a desire, a demand out there for people to become more financially literate. So I'm really happy to have you both here because I think you guys will be able to answer some questions and, shed some light on some situations that people might find themselves relating to.
Sure. Any way that we can help.
Okay. So my first question is, what lessons did you learn about money growing up, either at home or at school? And you can both take turns answering this.
Okay. You can go first, Glenn.
Okay. Well, we grew up as, my parents immigrated here from the Philippines and, and I was born here. So we learned early on there was not that much money. We didn't have much money. Growing up, I couldn't ask for like any toys or anything expensive. And my parents were always telling me, make sure you go to school, get a good job and then you'll be rich. Then you can buy whatever you want. And my goal was, in fourth grade, um, you know, um, I was in this little play. What was it? It was Scrooge. And
Scrooge, yeah.
oh my gosh, what is it called? Anyways, that
The Christmas.
yeah, I think it's but it never happened. So, but I was labeled as I was going to be businessman number two, right? And I was supposed to have my little little suitcase, and I grew up wanting to like ride in limos and like do all these things, but none of my parents they didn't know anyone who was rich. They didn't know anyone who was wealthy. So the only thing that they knew was like, hey, go to school, get a job, and work hard, and maybe you'll be rich. That's the only thing I knew about money. It was like my parents were very tight. They never took us out to dinner. There occasionally you'd have some McDonald's, but money was pretty tight. But eventually up they ended up buying like two or three homes, and also they wanted to open a business. I think they were afraid of the business side of it, so they never like ended up buying it. They ended up just like working very hard, working long hours, trying to support those two or three homes that they were doing. So what I grew up with money in my mind was like I didn't know anyone who was making a lot of money except what you watch on TV. We didn't know anyone personally, and I knew money was like you had to work hard for your money. That's how I grew up looking at money.
Yeah. So for me, I'm actually first generation. So I was born in the Philippines and we lived in Mexico before when we moved, me across the border here in California. I was like almost 10. So with us it was a one income household. My dad was an engineer, so he was the only one making money, but they made things work. But they were always money was always so tight. I remember I get really touched about it. I remember my parents, we would cross the border. We would love to, we would go to Safeway. We would go to San Diego's because we of course we're in Ensenada. So it's like an hour or two from the border. So we would cross the border to get our groceries. And my mom would they would buy their supplies and it has to fit till the next time we go. So we would go every 2 weeks or every 4 weeks. But even our dessert, I remember like for one dessert, my mom would ration everything and I hated it because it was like those Andes mint chocolate. Like we would have one for dinner, one for dessert. And I was like, oh gosh, this is awful. I just want to eat the whole box. I was a little chonker. But yeah, we never went hungry. We never went hungry. We always, had food on the table. I mean, I knew that money was tight, but it was because we couldn't buy anything extra, just the basics, right? So we only had two pairs of shoes, one for church and one for school for play. right? And you can't, we wouldn't get new shoes unless it would have holes in it. So what would my sister and I would do? We'd try to, rub it down and try to make holes in it so we could get new shoes, right? So that's the kind of like stuff that we grew up with. But once we, even right before we crossed the border, we moved to, to California. My dad started to partner up with some friends, some Chinese investors, and they saw the boom in video rentals, right? So he ended up, going into business and bought him off, and opened up two more. So he had three video stores running at the same time. And on top of that, he was always trying different things, but it was always on the small business side. So from, if we know, like the Kiyosaki, the four quadrants, it was all on small business. So we didn't have systems. So all these businesses, we were just trying to figure it out. So most of them failed, right? So I was like, wow, this is tough. My sister and I learned how to clean fish because my dad had a fish smoking company where we did the whole process, from cleaning the fish, marinating it, smoking it, and then sealing it, vacuum packing it, and packing it. And we were like, I don't know, elementary school or middle school. So we were young when we were doing that, child labor, right? And our hair would smell like smoke. But we learned a lot from it. So my parents were still working hard, right? So when it came to when I grew up, I had no problem to work hard. But when it came to like money, it's like pretty much all they could tell us was save money, go to school, get good grades, get a good job and save your money, which is funny because they own businesses. My dad says, but yeah, so that's how it was. And so I always wanted to own a business, but I was like, but I don't want to be stuck in the business. Right. So Glenn and I actually, when we had gotten married, we had looked into maybe opening some like home health, boarding cares. But then I was like, oh no, but we're going to be tied up there again. Right. Plus you have to have like so much money, and like it was going to take a while. It was just like a lot of risk. Right. And then we had an opportunity. So we had a lot of business opportunities, but it was always on the left side of the quadrants, which small business, you still have to be there. And that's what I didn't want, because that's where I grew up. I grew up in business, although all the businesses that my dad ran that we were part of, we all benefited from it. We learned from it more than, I think. Yeah, it gave us a good life. We had like the party house, like in high school and stuff like that. We were the house that everybody would go to and stuff like that. But what did we learn? That was it. Just work hard. Work hard and like save your money and don't ruin your credit. Like, what did that mean? I didn't know co-signing for somebody would ruin your credit. So I had a friend that I co-signed for, racked up 12 grand, and and left it. So I was responsible for it. So that was my first lesson of credit, and when it comes to like co-signing and stuff like that. But that's pretty much all we knew. So once Glenn and I got married, in our 20s, we were in another business. It was like a health and wellness, and there were mentors there, and then they had invested in some golf course property in San Felipe, Mexico. We actually did well. We invested with them. We got like plots and stuff like that. So it's a golf course, right? So anyways, to make a long story short, it was like over 60 grand that we made out, right? And what we didn't know is, like, we didn't know what we knew now. So we put all 100% in it into the house that we were going to lose, because we bought the house right before the crash of 2008. So
yeah, so that was pretty much growing up. Like, we just heard, work hard, save your money, and hopefully you'll make it. Because that was the recipe that they knew.
That's all I could transfer.
Yeah.
Right. So both of our parents, I think most of it, like, they failed along the way. Right. So they couldn't really transfer what they didn't know. They couldn't explain what, my parents were business owners, so they didn't have a 401k. So when it came to retirement, they actually struggled towards the end of their, like, the start of their retirement, because they didn't have their 401ks, and they like invested money. So like, my parents are what you would call, like, they would be asset rich, but cash poor. So there's got to be a balance in it, but Glenn's parents, they work, I think most of the time they work, so they have 401ks, you know what I mean? So it's just like a difference. So what would be the best is knowing all your options. We didn't know all our options. Okay, so I hope that answered. I mean, I know that was like a long answer, for your question, but I think it kind of encompasses everything that we're going to go over.
I think so too. And when you were talking, it brought something to mind. A lot of, well, our parents came here, we're like basically second generation. Well, at least I am. And
Hmm.
one thing I've noticed is, you know, our parents coming here, that's already a feat in itself. They're learning a whole new
Oh, yeah,
language, whole new
absolutely.
culture, whole new everything. You got to make new friends, you got to find a new family somehow. And
Yeah,
then in the midst of that, when you said that, what they know is basically they're learning along the way and they're able to
yeah,
transfer that. And I think in the process, we learn how to have some grit, if you know what I'm saying. And, I think it's a wonderful thing too, because then, you're more appreciative of everything as
yeah,
well. And, sometimes when it comes to when you're finally 18 or like they're in their 60s, they look at you different because sometimes you are the 401k, sometimes you are the retirement.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, it is. And I mean, I think, once I started going into nursing, I tell people that I started life with the end in mind. Like I started at the age of 20. I started working in a facility. It was like a subacute. They had like the subacute, the long-term side, long-term care, but I worked all the floors, all the shifts. But what I learned there early on is, where we would end up, at the end of life, right? And it was depressing. Imagine like 2021 going into work and then you're barely starting life and you're seeing where people are ending up, like they're like bedridden there, like just, you know, in vegetative state. I was like, oh my gosh, this is awful. And for our culture, right? For like Asians, well, especially for Filipinos, like you don't put your parents in a nursing home, right? Like you take care of them at home, you figure it out, right? But that's not possible nowadays, right? People have to work. Sometimes you don't have somebody to take care of you. So I told Glenn, I was like, especially that I work on that side. I said, like, when my time comes, I don't want. First of all, I don't want to be a burden to my kids. Plus, since I work on that side, when it comes to my turn, I want to have my own nurse, right? I want to be taken care of at home as much as possible instead of sharing her with 50 other patients.
Mhm.
Right?
Mhm.
Yeah, I think a lot of it, like growing up, it was like you, we were latchkey kids.
No, yeah,
It was literally when I got home from school, my mom would leave like, she would leave like an hour later. Like basically, she worked nights. My dad didn't come home till like 8 p.m. and we were like alone for a long time. Where my
oh
mom would
yeah,
go to work early and I wouldn't see her, and that was like the toughest thing growing up. It was like, mommy, why are you leaving? I just got here. It was so tough. You had to figure things out on your own. And what do kids do when they're unsupervised? Oh man, good thing we didn't have
experiment.
YouTube back then or anything like that recorded what we did. But it was pretty. We did like we were just unsupervised kids, and at that time, there was no video. There was, I mean, we would play, like, at least we had Atari. We would play that for a little bit. We would have friends over. We would one time, we would play with like fireworks or firecrackers. And my dad came home early one time and he caught us like playing with fire. And we got so in trouble. And it was just like, dude, that's what we did. We just got into trouble and hopefully no one found out, because that stuff would have been cleaned up by the time we got home.
Yeah.
Hopefully the house wasn't burnt down by then, but you had to figure it out. You have to learn how to be safe on what you're doing. If you're going to do dangerous stuff, you have to figure it out. It's like, hey, make sure we got like some water or something there. And just, you just have to have fun. And we wouldn't go to anyone else's houses or anything, but we would invite like our friends over. And it was tough. And so what they growing up was like they had my older cousin from the Philippines actually move in with us. But before that, we would have like their old aunts or old uncles come from the Philippines and they would stay with us, during that time. But they weren't really watching us. They were more of like sleeping or or cooking. But we just had to figure out stuff on our own
Mm.
and entertain ourselves. And what that really taught me was like, hey man, if you're gonna make it in this world, you got to be independent. You got to do things on your own. You gotta like, um, you gotta just make sure whatever you do, you got to do it right, and you got to be safe. And my mom was always, make sure do everything safely. Don't do that. You got to be careful. So I grew up also on the air of being safe and not taking too many risks. but that was until I met Mitch where I started to decide, to take more risk. It was like more fun, even though at that young age we were taking risks like playing fireworks and and having friends over.
But experiment with whatever's in the house. You know what I mean? It's like knowing what I know now, I think it's more of like the spiritual stuff that was scary. We played with Ouija boards. We totally like knowing how dangerous it is now. I'm like, I'm actually a person that's sensitive, and we would get into fights. They're like, "You're moving it." They're like, "No, I'm not pushing it," but it would like take off because we would totally shut down all the lights in the house. This was like a neighbor, like 5 houses away. Her parents also owned businesses. They were also latchkey kids, and her sister was in high school. We were in middle school, and we would just shut down all the lights, just candles, and then we would just summon we don't know what. But thank God, that we didn't get into like knowing what we do, like that's scary. Like that's even scarier than, other things that we could have gotten into. Right. But just like one of the things that we had gotten into, and, my parent, like it had Parker Brothers on it. Like we didn't think like it was just a game. It's a toy. We didn't know the gravity of it. And like my parents bought it for us. They didn't think anything of it, probably just to keep us busy here. Then we buy you some board games and go play with your friends. Right.
Open portal. But
yeah. Imagine, I'm like, seriously, we would get into fights. We're like, you're pushing it. They're like, I did not. They're like, it would just take off. Like, it was just weird, this like it would, yeah. Anyways, but that was creepy.
We should move on to the next question. Okay. So how did watching your parents navigate risks and challenges in their business or, them getting assimilated into, I guess, American culture? How did that shape your perspective on entrepreneurship?
So for me, it was actually entrepreneurship was, what do you call it, in mind for me. Like when I was little, I told my dad that I'd always want to go into business with him. I'm like, let's find a business, Dad. Let's do something. Because I saw like he was fearless. My dad was actually fearless. He would try different things. He would try to open businesses, and because he just wanted the American dream. He figured, I got to try it. I'm here. I got here. You know what I mean? He was like those stories that he left Philippines with his life savings of, I don't know, $200-300 in his pocket. Right. And they moved to Mexico first, though. That was even tougher because like, I think he spoke English better than he spoke Spanish. But imagine going to a totally different country, leaving everything behind. And actually I was left. They left me. I was 4 months old. They took my sister because they didn't have an established home yet. So after 2 years, they came and got me. But anyways, back to the question is like my perspective in business. Like I wanted to do business because I saw the control, like, right. You're your own boss. But what I didn't like is that the time, right. When you're in the small business is that you got to be there. You're the boss. You got to do everything. You get to be the boss. Right. So when I started working as a nurse, it was tough. It was tough to work for somebody else. So when it came to business, I always wanted to do business, but what is the perfect business out there? We didn't know. So all of my dad's friends, they all had small businesses also. If we would have known people with big businesses and systems, it would have been different. But again, they could only transfer what they know. And for my dad, like all he could transfer is small business. Okay.
Yeah. Growing up, it was what they saw was like real estate. They started investing in real estate. We moved around a lot. We actually made one of our houses into a duplex. So we kind of like split it in half. And so I saw that money side of it. It's like, oh, this is pretty cool. You could actually like make money off of renters and everything. But what I learned early on also was my parents were way too nice. They were letting people like rent for so cheap. I'm like, this is it. You should be charging more. Even as a young kid, I'm like, no, this is not worth it. It's like they like basically what happened was we kind of like cut the house in half, and my childhood house growing up, it turned into like, it's like, dude, they're only paying that much, and we have half the house left over. You should be charging more, because I knew what the mortgage was at the time, and then I'm like, bro, you need to like charge them more. And even at a young age, I'm like, the value that you're giving people. And the value you put on certain things, it could be skewed because of your emotional attachment to it. My parents always felt like they needed to help people. Mm-hmm. And so when they would help people, they would take the hit. They would take less in rent, or they would allow them to like take advantage of them, or they wouldn't let them like pay rent late, or in that situation. It was just like I felt like my parents were always on the losing side. That they were being so nice to people, that people would take advantage of them.
Mhm.
And then so what that meant was they needed to work harder, they needed to work all overtime, or they would, and they sacrificed a lot for us too. Like I know with us, they wanted us to make sure that my brother and I would be in school, or that someone was there to pick us up like after school. And they just made sure that someone was gonna be there, you know. Whether that's where my like older cousin came along, and he was married, and he had a kid that passed away like very young. And he basically took care of us, and I saw that like that was the exchange. My mom was he stayed with us for he didn't really spend that much for rent, but then we used him as a babysitter, and he was great. He was like our second parent, So with that, it was just growing up. I knew there was a lot of sacrifices, and there was a lot of decisions that had to be made that I knew my parents didn't want to make.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, similar with like my parents as well. What I learned about like I guess like business is early on. My dad he was the one that stuck it out while some of his business partners would flake out or would take off with money, like stuff like that. So I learned that he says like it's tough even, and one of it was like his own sibling. He gave him an opportunity to run one of the stores and it was mismanaged and it was like being liquidated while it was open. And my dad didn't know. So it was things like that. But then it's like sometimes like I realized also, what I learned from it, like in business is like sometimes people don't want the opportunity. I think like my uncle was just given an opportunity that he didn't want. It didn't fit his personality. He didn't want to run the store. My dad thought he was, helping him out. So sometimes it's like he says it's also tough to be in business with your own like family or close friends, right? Because when it comes to business, it has to be run like a business. Right. So I knew that I had to figure out like a business that was flexible also, that you don't have to be there, right? That you're not tied up down to the business. So when it came to like looking for like a business opportunity, it had to be something that was flexible and something that you could eventually leave, that you don't have to be there 24/7.
So I was wondering, could you like when we were discussing earlier what it's like being managing an operating room? So you mentioned something about it being really tense in that environment. So we were going to discuss um, high tension and risk, and um, how people can use that as a tool, especially in finances, as opposed to being adverse from those things.
Yeah, I think in my background, my field, it's pretty high risk. It's a lot of specialized knowledge that you need to know, and there is a lot of tension because you go in there. Let's just say you're a new person going in there. You don't know what to do. You've had some training, but you got to figure it out. You got to figure it out, and you got to ask for help when you need it. But you got to power on through it and just like try and you're trying your best to keep your patient alive, of course, and then also make sure that the outcomes are a positive outcome for the client, for the patient. And so what I found out with when I think about like finances and like money, it's like you got to go out there also and do your research as well, and then find out for the help as well. Because what I thought in the beginning, when before we got involved with the financial industry, I thought I was a pretty smart guy. I researched online. I was investing in stocks. I was like saving money. We had invested in some real estate. We were doing all these things, and then when we finally we sat down with a financial professional, what I found out was I was putting all my stuff in the wrong basket, And the thing was, I thought I was doing everything right. even as like a new person, as a new nurse, you're thinking, okay, I'm doing pretty good here. Everything's all going good. But then as an experienced nurse, when you walk in that room and you think everything's going smooth, and you look in there like, oh my gosh, what is this person doing? It's like he could like kill the patient, or it's going to delay the case, or the surgeon's going to be mad, or whatever it is. All I found out was like you got to like ask for help and get and have your for us, it was like have your room, checked out by someone else, like someone like come and check out your room, make sure you're doing everything good. Same thing with the finances. Like we're able to sit down with people, make sure that they're doing everything good, and making sure they're putting their stuff in the right place, and making sure that everything's protected as well.
Okay, so Glenn, can you tell us a bit more about what it is you do in the medical field?
So my background is a registered nurse in the operating room. Um, and I've been doing that now for about 14 years now. One thing I do there is more management type, leadership type, helping the leads run the show, help basically put this whole puzzle together with different surgeons and different specialties and different skill sets of our nurses, and surgical techs, to put it together a team that best suits our patients' needs. So helping them get the best outcomes. So that's what I do.
Okay. And then for me, I was also worked for the same hospital, but I thought with more flexibility with the three kids was I did home health and hospice. So I was a visiting nurse. So I visited the patients that would be discharged from the hospital, and we would follow them at home. And these are patients that are really frail. Actually, they were very sick, and we would try to keep them alive at home in the home setting. Plus, they would pull me onto the actively dying on the hospice side, and you would be there in their last 24, 72 hours of life. So very stressful, very stressful. I thought it was very draining emotionally, physically, everything. And then I'd have to come home and deal with like doing homework with the kids, doing dinner and all that stuff, plus doing my charting, my nursing notes. But yeah, that's what life was before.
And going back to basically the environment you both grew up in, were there any sacrifices that your family made for the business that stood out to you, their businesses?
Yeah. So, for my parents' business, it was a big sacrifice. We could never, it was a video store that was open 7 days a week, from 10 o'clock till pretty much 10 o'clock at night. So somebody always had to be there. So when we traveled, we always traveled alone. So my mom would go home to the Philippines. The only time she traveled was, to go to her mom's funeral. And then my dad, we just never, we were a family, but yet we didn't really spend quality time, but just working there at the store. So it was, that was a lot of sacrifice, a lot of sacrifice. Like my parents, my sister and I played sports. They weren't really there for any of our games. My parents weren't there to pick us up from school. We had to figure it out, either, walk home. Granted, it was only 3 blocks away from my high school. So I was able to walk home. But when I was in drill team, softball, they never, watched any of our games. They weren't, what do you call it? They weren't involved like in any of our, activities or anything like that.
Yep. Growing up as well, it's like they weren't there. I wanted to do like some type of sports. I have a cousin who was in like Little League and everything, but they weren't there. I played sports in high school. They never went to any of my games because they weren't there. They weren't there. They weren't around. They were either at work or that wasn't their thing. So they were just like, you're supposed to go to school just to study. So, but they paid for everything. But the thing that they sacrificed was basically they had to work. They had to work in order to pay those mortgages, which the rent wasn't covering. So
yeah, my parents never went on vacation. Never. Like my mom, we had the store for about 15 years. She never went on vacation. One day off. It was Christmas Day. So we would go to Vegas because the only thing that's open 24/7. And she would be back there the 26th. Right. That was the sacrifice. She made the ultimate sacrifice. I say she made the ultimate sacrifice, for the family. But was there benefits? Yeah. Could have been done better. I think so. I don't know. But they do the best that they could, being immigrants.
And so I'm curious because this is something we mentioned during our conversation earlier, and I was wondering if you like to add a little bit more to this. Um, do you think that, you mentioned your parents just, really figuring it out, how to run business and not really being there, at these events. Do you think that's the reason why both of you prioritized, starting a business together and making time for family, or at least searching for that?
Absolutely. That was number one for us. Like we had to figure out like what can we do? Like in nursing, like it violated everything that we wanted to, our, our goals that we wanted to be spend time with the kids and be there for our kids and all that. So we couldn't do any of that when we worked as nurses. And so we did look for something that was always our priority was, and then the more time that we had, the stronger we got in our faith, right? Like our parents didn't go to church because we were always in business, and Glenn's parents were always working. So where their priority was just surviving, pretty much, you know. So like with us, like we, as adults and as parents, we wanted to be with our kids, do the things that we wanted to have, right? Be involved with our kids, be there. Like now we do enjoy vacations with them.
Yeah, for me growing up, it was like, hey, so it was,
Too bad.
I wanted to do all these things, but it was like we gave the opportunity for our kids to do all these things. So whether it was dance, Boy Scouts, like sports, whatever it is, we just encourage them to do that. And then traveling also, I never left the state until I was like I don't know, like
Oh, wait, no.
literally, I don't know. I think we went to Vegas one time with my uncle, not even with my parents. When I was like 14 or something. But that was it. That was the only time I left the state. Our vacations were let's go up to San Jose to our aunt's house.
Yeah.
And that was very rare. Maybe I think maybe we did that like once or maybe twice during my childhood.
Yeah.
And it was like our only vacations was going to like Sequoia National Park and then coming back down. There was really no vacation anywhere. And
sightseeing.
Yeah, sightseeing
In the car.
Yeah. And
with a trunk full of food.
Yeah, we couldn't even eat out. There was nothing to eat out. And then we would go to Disneyland and we couldn't eat the food there. They had food, you go to the car if you were hungry. So we had to go to the car, eat the food, and go back into the park. So there was a lot of sacrifice. There was a lot of things that we missed out. But that's something that I do. I love that I grew up, that I wouldn't change a thing, because it taught me to be humble. It taught me to strive for more. It's like I wanted something more for my kids too. So I think that's what pushed us to like be able to, like, my parents never took me out to a restaurant. They never took me out to a restaurant until after I was 18. Maybe I was like 20 years old.
It's a luxury, right? Going to restaurants or eating out was a luxury.
Yeah.
You eat at home. You bring, you pack, you make your sandwiches and pack it with you. You don't buy food while you're out because there's just no budget for that.
Yep. So, and then also like time wise as well, I want to make sure we had plenty of time for the kids, and that's something the business was able to do for us, was be able to schedule our own time. Don't work weekends or holidays or take call, and just be able to be there 100% with your kids
or parents.
Exactly.
So can you touch on that point that you made during our discussion earlier about, you were both in the medical field, making a certain amount of income, but not understanding taxes?
Oh, yeah. I can tell you. Well, first of all, I was a workaholic, so I had no problem working 7 days a week. But we couldn't figure out that why was, the more that we made seems as the less that we made. So you want to share a little bit more about that?
Yeah. So it was kind of crazy. It was like we were working a lot. We made good money and we spent good money. And, every time I would work extra, I'm like thinking, all right, cool, I should be making this much more money. But then when our check came, it was like, it didn't even make sense. I just wasted a whole day working extra hard, thinking I'm going to get a good payout. But at the end, it's like there was nothing left over. And then one time we did have to pay taxes one time. And literally, I had to sell all my camera gear just to pay for those taxes, just to pay for those taxes.
$10,000.
And it was tough, because it was like I love taking pictures of the kids and I love that photography stuff. But when that happened, I realized, like, man, we need to do something else.
Like, what's going on? It's like we have seniority now, so we're making more money from the outside. We look good, right? We look good, like everybody, like we look good, but financially wise, like what's going on? What's happening? And so I was like, okay, so if we're not making more money, let me just work more. So by me working those extra hours would push us to the next tax bracket. So we would owe more, right? So it was just a rat race where like there's got to be what we knew that if you owned a business, right, there was like write-offs. It was in favor for the taxes are in favor for the business owners. So we're like, okay, we got to figure out like what business though, what business.
Yeah.
Were there any financial lessons that you intentionally avoided teaching your children because of your own experiences?
Mm, I don't think there's anything that we tell them not to overspend, to be more um, better with their money, right? They be better stewards of their money. That's something that we didn't teach them. I think like everything that we taught them, like they grew up in it, understanding it that, we really didn't have to teach them. They got it, you know. But can they do better? Like depends on the kids. Some kids like to shop and some kids don't like to spend at all, So it really depends on the kid.
Yeah. And one thing I'm proud of also is their ability to give as well.
Yeah.
So they do tithe, and
Yeah.
you don't see that too much from like younger children, and just barely getting by. One thing, Mitch always, from the very beginning when we were together early, it's like, what, give them that extra tip money or whatever it is. It's like, or give money to the homeless person. It's not going to kill you. That dollar is not going to kill you.
Always give back.
And always give back. And so that always stuck in my mind. And I'm always reminded by her. And I'm thinking, oh, I need to save money. Because that's what I was growing up as. If money was tight, you just keep your own money. But when I met her, it was more like, hey, and then also with tithing as well, it's like the more that you give, the more that comes to you. And it was at that point, I realized like, hey, I don't need the money. I'm okay. I'll survive. I'll be fine. It's not going to kill me, but just giving, and she always makes me feel good when, when she's like, Glenn, just give a little extra. And I do. And you do feel good. And it's like, it's not going to kill me. And I know it's going to make their life just a little bit better, whatever that is. So whether it's tithing or just giving your own time and or money, it really does come back and it does make you feel good. I think that's one thing that makes you definitely fulfilled.
Yeah.
And that was kind of missing as well. Like charity wise, we didn't give much as kids, but I know like her dad is, but what they did do was they opened their homes. My parents always opened their homes for anyone coming from the Philippines just to get started. And they always gave in that sense. So I guess they were giving,
in that way, like monetary, but then serving others. So that's what we do. We get the kids involved, like a nonprofit organizations and, donating and then delivering, whether it's toys or food to the homeless, like we get them involved. We bring them there so they can actually see what others are going through, and then it makes them also more grateful for what they have.
Yeah. And then growing up as well, early for the kids, our group was involved with going to like downtown or, the homeless Skid Row. And we were giving out clothes and food and everything. And, Christmas morning, kids are normally waking up and like opening their new toys. Not our kids. Our kids were like, hey, let's go down to Skid Row. Let's give back. And then we'll come back and, you can enjoy your gifts and just be grateful for what you have, because there's a lot of people that don't have anything at all.
Mm-hmm.
Even 2 Corinthians 9, verse 6-7 says, the point is this, whoever sows sparingly will also reap sparingly. Whoever sows bountifully will also reap bountifully. Each one must give as he has decided in his heart, not reluctantly or under compulsion, for God loves a cheerful giver. And that's the English Standard Version. Yeah, and I've also seen this too. Like in my journey at the beginning, when I was learning about financial literacy, I noticed, I don't know how to put this. There's giving out of your heart, and there's also giving to take advantage of the blessings that people know they'll receive if they give. So this ties back to my our earlier one of your answers from earlier. How do we balance being a cheerful giver, but also not being taken advantage of, especially in business?
Mm-hmm. In business, when it comes to like giving your time, to me, the way that I see it is like, are these people really needing the help? Because you can get taken advantage of. Like, right, people, um, what is it? There's a fine line. There's like a tough balance to it. Is like not giving somebody something that they could do for themselves, right? Like, for example, if there's something that they need to learn from, I made that mistake. Like, I wanted to mother everybody, like keep people from making the mistakes, but in actuality, I was robbing them from their blessings, right? So giving them where they can't, but guiding them and stuff like that. I don't know if that answers the question.
Yeah, I think what it comes down to is like, I'll give you as much as what you want, you know, or like how much you'll put in. If you'll put in like 50% of the work, then I'll only do like 50% of my job, because it seems like you're not interested in either saving money or protecting your family or just making sure that you retire at the age that you want with the income that you want. If you're not really interested in it and you'd rather like say you're more interested in knowing the sports scores of your favorite team, if you're more interested in that, then we won't we won't give it all, it's because we know like you're not taking it seriously. So if you our goal though is to educate you enough to where you'll want the information and to get you educated enough to where you'll be like, yes, that's what I need. The sports, that's not going to get me and my family to where I want to be financially. So once that person shifts in that sense, because I used to love the Lakers, I used to love like doing all these things, but all of a sudden I would rather spend my time building something that's going to allow me to spend more time with my kids and retire sooner and just become debt free and just have that financial sense of just being free,
When it comes to like donations, like for example, like giving, away to the homeless, like to me it's like, well, Glenn worked in psych and he knew that some of these people are actually working out there for a living. You know what I mean? So he's like, don't give them money because they're just going to buy stuff with it. There's resources out there for them, but they choose just not to get it. Right. So, once he told me that, I'm like, well, for sure they're going to use food and water. So I would always have all kinds of snacks from, protein bars to water to juices in my car. So if I see somebody like asking for money, I give them food. You know what I mean? It's like, then they're like, I know that it's going to go to good use and then they will, anyways, I don't know if that like makes sense, but yeah, it is what do you call it? Knowing do people really need the help or are you really helping them? Because sometimes, you can be enabling people as well. So it is tough. Like you just want to, help, but yeah.
Faith without works is dead. So if you desire something and the Lord knows our hearts, it's one thing to have faith, but you have to act on it. So just like what Glenn said, he wants to see you actively participate. I mean, if it's kind of like, hey, I'm working with you, so are you going to work with me? I can't just do this all by myself.
That's right. Like you can't steer a parked vehicle. That's what I tell people. I'm like, you got to do your part, right? People are like, oh, I leave it up to God. I pray. I'll pray on it. I'm like, okay, but God, we are here to help you. But you got to do your part. God can't steer a parked vehicle, right?
Right. So how did you decide whether to be open or private about money matters with your children, and what impact do you think that had on them?
Oh, I think it needs to be. I think in every house, I think you have to pass it on. Like we have like classes for like spouses, for women and stuff like that. Not only that, it has to be, people don't know what they don't know. In other words, right? You can't expect people to know what to do with it because we've met people like whether it's somebody that's just got out of high school to people that are retiring and the information was never passed down. So it's our responsibility, at least with our household, is to educate our kids. Actually, what I love with our business is that we do educate our kids and then now our kids are educating their friends. So it's like the gift that keeps giving. Like we invest in them and they invest in others, and not invest in others, but they continue that blessing. They continue to give that blessing out.
Yeah. I think kids need to know like, what's
definitely understand.
Yeah, definitely, because like with debt, with compound interest, they're so young and it's like we started our kids off early. Our older daughter, she started working when she was like 15 or 16 years old, and she didn't want to go to college, she didn't want to do anything, but we're like, hey, you need to like save money while you're younger because you'll have time on your side. So from an early age she saved she was always saving money, and it didn't matter what field she would go into, she'll be like a millionaire by the time she's 65. So it's pretty cool, even though, let's say you don't even have a good education, or you didn't go to school, you could still like become a millionaire just starting early and just being consistent and putting money away, and then just making sure that they don't get into any debt, and like credit cards and everything. So
just having good habits. We teach them like good habits with like money, because it's everything that we do, whether if it's for your health or with your finance, it's all habits, right? So having good habits, because how can you be trusted with big money if you can't handle little money, right? So regardless, if you're just starting, with your first job, or with your career making millions of bucks, if you can't handle little money, you'll carry those same habits when you're making a lot of money. We know a lot of people. We do analysis for our clients, and you'd be surprised. People that look good, most people are broke, but they look like they're doing well, right? You just never know nowadays.
Especially with social media. And one thing I learned from my coaches and mentor is basically money is a tool, but it amplifies who you already are.
Yeah, absolutely. It does.
Yeah.
It's cool.
Yeah. And that's why it's so important for us to have that relationship with God and have that inner peace within, because without that, it would be so easy to be destructive.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. And so I'm curious, do you think your children see money the same way you do, or have they all developed different perspectives?
Different perspectives, totally different perspective. With us, it was just like the income would be coming from one source. It would be like a job. Like with them, they know that there's many different possibilities. Like they're able to be like with my youngest, like her and her friends did like a clothing shop, like an online, selling like, kind of like a thrift clothes and stuff like that. Just finding ways like to make money already, right? Knowing that you don't just have to wait till, you graduate. It doesn't have to wait till, there's many ways of creating income, right? And my daughter also, because she's good in art, and then she was designing clothes. It was like a custom made. So she would design like jackets or sweatshirts or whatnot, because she would, draw it out, bleach it out, and then design it custom to that person. Like, and one of her customers paid $200, for a jacket, so it's just, we encourage them, like, whatever your gift is, utilize it, right? Provide a service. It's not just taking people's money. It's be proud. You're providing, like, it. It has to be fair also. How much time she put into it. Like everything was custom, so people pay for that right now, right? Is that a good investment on your money? I don't know, because for certain people, like, they shouldn't be spending that money like that, right? But they're going to spend it anyways. So,
yep. And I think one thing that they got to see that we weren't able to see was actually hanging out with like multimillionaires, going to their homes, meeting them, seeing how nice they were, and like see how giving they were, and like what type of people they were. Because I always thought rich people were snobs or like mean people, and they got their way to the top by just being like mean spirited and putting everyone down, or just fighting their way to the top. But we realized with this company, there are so many people that are making multiple six figures, millions of dollars,
the greatest people.
and they're the greatest people. They have the best relationship with their wives, their spouses, their kids, their families. And they just have a lot of friends, and they do what's right for the client. That's what I loved about this business. That's what really attracted me to it, was like, I was around people that were making good money, the surgeons, anesthesiologists, but did they have a great family life? I mean, like the ones that were exposed to, like our brokers, like Adam and Johanna, they just are a great example of.
It's a well balanced. That's why we knew, like, they were younger than us, like almost close, like 10 years younger than us, but we saw their lifestyle. They had a well balanced, they had a balanced life. I mean, they were strong in their faith, they were strong in their church, they were strong in their marriage, strong in their relationship with their kids and their parents. And I'm like, okay, that's what we want. Right. And the rest of our jobs, they could care less. When we worked as nurses, like any other jobs that we had, they didn't have that. Like, even like sometimes with Glenn, like his influence at work, I'm like, who have you been hanging around with? Like, because it's who you hang out with, they influence you, right? So we are really fortunate, we're really blessed to be influenced, and also our vision was stretched, all the possibilities, right? That our limiting beliefs that we had as, as kids, as immigrants. Well, for me, as being first generation immigrant, I didn't think that I would be successful in, what do you call it, just the way it was programmed. Because growing up, who was Richie Rich's dad? He was an older white gentleman, right? He had businesses and stuff like that. I'm like, well, I guess none of those. I'm not a man. I'm not white, and I don't know anything about finance. How could I be successful here? But thank God, thank God our business, allows all of that. They grow us. The most valuable thing that we got from it, I think, is the leadership. Is like, growing ourselves, like, right, like the growth that we've learned here, we can take it anywhere. Like, people wonder, like, what do you do? Like, you have finance, but it's, what do you do? And I'm like, what do you mean? And I think it's because we show up differently. People are like, what do these two do? What is it? Like, we emceed for my aunt's 65th birthday, and they thought that was our business, that we DJ'd, and because we were doing the announcements, we were like, getting everybody, get the party going. They're like, is this your business? I'm like, no, we don't do this. This is the first time we've done this. They're like, you guys seem so well in articulating. I'm like, we just got used to it. They teach us confidence, they teach us leadership, like all that stuff. Like, we got so much more value, I think, in the personal growth, aside from everything else. And we get to transfer that to our kids. So our kids are also happy, healthy, strong, kids that are also strong with their peers, you know what I mean? Like, leadership wise, and they can guide their friends as well. So it just passes on, and it's faith-based. Most of our leaders are what I call strong in their faith. And they were like, great, perfect. It's 100% everything that we wanted. So it wasn't hard to transition over and have no regrets. Everything that the business promised us, it did, and some. Like, we haven't hit everything that we wanted to, but we're on track.
So you mentioned earlier about that time where you were searching for the right business system, business model. How did you get to finance?
It's so funny. Yeah. Like, again, like earlier we had mentioned, we were looking at like having your own home care and then home health agency. And then, like, growing up, actually, she's in her business, actually her previous career, before home health and hospice, she worked for this physicians group, and she was basically head of like this cardiac, what was it called? Cardiac, like, basically people discharged from the hospital, and developing a program for them to not go back to the hospital.
Built systems.
So she built systems.
Business tycoon.
So she was a Robert Kiyosaki super fan, and so she built systems. She was super smart, a little Vietnamese lady down in Orange County, but she was amazing. She was a hard worker, but what she didn't have was like that family quality of life. She was always working. It didn't work out too well with.
And it took a toll on her marriage, so she pretty much didn't have it. And I was like, okay.
Yeah, but anyway, she basically they were trying to get us to like start our own agency within that, and have Mitch take a higher role in that. So there was a lot of that going on. And then actually, Boba, before it even got popular, actually her our godparents actually wanted us to start a business in that as well. So we looked into that as well, and then we looked into other things. And eventually we did some like network marketing thing, and my cousin would do all that stuff, and he got me involved with it. And it was just like you would have to do so much work for so little money.
Yeah.
And then once we found out, like, and then people were, there's like vitamins, all this, it just didn't appeal to me, all that other stuff.
Just didn't have the balance. And so how did we get into this business, right? Through prayers. Through hard prayers. When so we were one of those that we didn't know about money and finance. We bought our first home right before the crash of 2008. So we had lost everything. So imagine, like, we're both, professionals working in the hospital, thinking that, we look at from the outside, but we actually lost everything, and we had gone into debt. So I prayed and prayed and prayed. And then we were guided into, what do you call this? We ended up renting a house, right? After losing everything, we ended up renting a house directly next door to the family that was going to introduce me to this business. And so, like, I saw her lifestyle. Like, she had everything. She was like in her early 30s, had 4 kids. She would bake cookies from scratch, all waiting when their kids got home. I was like, what does this lady do? She would take my kids to the beach and for ice cream. And they said, like, when you're desperate, you'll ask for help. And so I did. I asked her one day, is like, I specialize in wound care when I was doing home health as well. So my back was hurting in my 30s. So one day I asked her, I was like, her name was Jen. I said, Jen, what do you do? And she says, Mitch, you work hard, you need to work smart. And I was like, is it legal? That's what I wanted to know. If is it legal, but it's got to be, because I knew they were strong in their faith, and they were, it has to be legal. I mean, they're like, a good family, and they were really big in their church. So I said, it's got to be legal. So anyways, I came to her office and I saw it, and I saw the business and the opportunity in their system. And there were people that were even much younger than we were, between the ages of 25 to 35, that were doing much better than us. So I said, okay, so this is it. I studied it. There was people there that were had their own business. There was a dentist professionals. There was a detective. So it's got to be legit, right? There was a detective. There was LAPD. There was a lawyer, public defender there, and then our our mentor, our direct mentor, was a server. So I was like, okay, it's got to be It's got to be a legit business. And yeah, and that was it. Never turned back. So within that year, I transitioned over and went full time.
And in what ways did entering the finance industry change the way you view or manage your own finances?
Oh my gosh, it actually it gave us a step by step, like, what should we do? So exactly what we learn is what we teach our clients. Everything. It's a full balanced, right? From emergency fund, what is like an emergency fund, and also saving up for retirement, saving up, all that stuff, short term, mid term, and long term, right? And then also, having fun. It's not just there. There are people that you may know that are great savers, but they hold on to it, and then when they enjoy it, they pass away, and then it just goes to wherever, right? Goes to probate or whatever and stuff like that. But that's what we help prevent also, is for our clients to, aside from them building their wealth, is also keeping their wealth, and making that transfer, and preventing their money and going to probate. So it's a lot.
What is it like being in business with your son?
Being in business with my son, actually, it's like, of course, it's like we're what do you call this? We are like business partners. So sometimes I can come across like a mom, right? But for the most part, like, I think with his personality, and since he grew up in business, it was an easy transition for him. And I actually love it because we get to hang out together. We get to, like, take our breaks together and, really work as a team. But of course, there's like these little things here and there that you can't avoid because, the family side still comes, sneaks in. But for the most part, we're actually, I believe, I don't know, maybe you can ask him one day, but I think we're a great team, right? I think it's great, building with him and seeing, that he's a product of this business, what this business has done, for him too. He's like so young, but yet his knowledge is like for somebody that probably be like triple his age, right? So in other words, it's fun. I think it's fun.
Yeah, I wish I was 22 and learning all these concepts, and it's fun. I got to hang out with him all day today, and it was just like we would poke at each other, have fun. It's like, Dad, can you give me some food? I'm like, dude, no. It was just really fun. And then, like, reaching out, and I looked at his business, and his actual business has grown so much over like the past year. I looked at it, I'm like, whoa. Although he works for us as our chief operating officer, he does a lot of stuff that he does for our business. But then on top of that, he's building his own agency as well. Mm-hmm. And it is throughout the United States as well. So it's pretty exciting. Man, for a 22-year-old to have multiple agents throughout the US, and then and seeing him teach the
teach and train
everything that we know as well, and transferring that skill and knowledge to some new people. It's just amazing. It's just that scalability that you don't see in other businesses. And regular businesses, you would have to like find a new land. You'd have to come up with more money, employees, get more insurance in order for you to scale your business. But with this business, I see it's already scaled with him, and we don't have to spend any more money. And so with scaling the business, it's pretty amazing.
I think it's great because, like, you see that the future that he's going to have, right? Being able to guide him, work together, so we get to spend time together. We get to so like, I think with us, like, family time and business time, it doesn't stop. It's impossible to not talk about business when we're having family time, but also we could schedule our family time. So like, we're an active family. So like, now that it's cold, he's like, oh my gosh, snowboarding. So we snowboard with him, right? In the summers, we go stand up paddle boarding, going to the desert. We do a lot of stuff. But now, aside from us building the business together, we get to have the fun together. I think we're fun parents. I don't know. Maybe we should, again, maybe we should ask them their opinion.
If you asked for more time with your family, it sounds like you got it.
Yeah, exactly that. Right. And then also being able to take off at any time if there's an emergency with the, what they call it, my parents or his parents, whether it's like procedures, like their surgeries or like, some decisions, some really, tough decisions that they have to make, where actually it works that we come from a medical background to guide them and be there with them.
And
as well as
so,
them out with their retirement and everything.
Yeah.
So
yeah. And so to wrap this up, what money related values or principles do you hope your children will pass on to the next generation?
Mhm.
um, I just believe, that we'll be like sending generational wealth
Yeah.
down our family line. And I just watched something on the Vanderbilts versus the Rockefellers, and I just want them to create a legacy, continue our legacy of just generational wealth and make it grow bigger and bigger and bigger, like the Rockefellers versus the Vanderbilts who lost all their money by second or third generation.
Mhm.
So just maintaining that, making sure that that our legacy is just that we just want to be the grandma and grandpa that's on everyone's um, fireplace where they're like, oh, thank God, grandma and grandpa were able to like set this family apart from everyone else and just took care of us and thought like generations down the line
Mhm.
to keep us alive
Yeah. But I
and
think the, what do you
successful.
call it? To me, like wealth is faith, right? Having, being strong in your faith. Because like you could see families like with the money, but without faith, I think everything goes back to faith, right? Have being God the center, guiding you through, through everything. Because you can have all the money in the world, but if you don't have your faith and your, it just, if there's faith in there, I think everybody will be okay. So that's like one of the goals that I think that was most important that I hope that we transfer to our kids is the faith, right? Being strong in their faith, right? And teaching that to the next generation that it always is, it's always faith based. It's actually going to be, because we're going to put that in the trust that everyone has to be faith based. And with like contribution and all that stuff, always giving back. So it's just like a well balanced business, not only them being blessed, but them blessing others as well.
Thank you so much for doing this interview with me. I understand that you guys are both busy. And so for those of you who watch this video, please comment below. Tell us what you learned, what your takeaways are. I hope that today's interview gave you some insights, maybe even make you think about things a different way in that area of your life. So make sure to hit the bell and the subscribe button and share it with someone that you think this will benefit. All right, guys, take care, and I'll see you next time.
All right.
Bye.
Night.
Bye.